Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the TechSea Founders Special Source podcast. I'm Kieran, and I'm joined again by Ken. And today our guest is Steve Wolf, who is the founder and CEO of Team Wildfire. Now, Team Wildfire offers revolutionary services to tame the most destructive wildfires. So, hi, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Kieran, Ken, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And why don't you start out just by giving us a little bit of an introduction to Team Wildfire?
Absolutely. So Team Wildfire is an organization designed to execute on an idea. And the idea is that wildfires are terrible. Wildland firefighting is extremely ineffective. What controls fire is actually the weather. And until you can control the weather, you can't control the fire. So you can control wind and rain in the microclimate around a fire with the right technology. And in our opinion, that would be jet engines mounted on trucks, blowing at wildfires, and feed retardants into the exhaust. So you're basically creating a 400-mile-an-hour hurricane on wheels that allows you to push back fire fronts and apply tremendous amounts of retardant over large areas very quickly.
Wow.
That's it.
Yeah, it's a little bit different to the usual kind of little SaaS startups and things.
Well, we're a SaaS as well, Kieran. No, we're absolutely a SaaS. But yeah, suppression as a service.
Right. So please elaborate.
All right. Well, I'm not aware of any fire departments that have really great ability to manage wildfire. I mean, obviously, places like Cal Fire in Australia, they get a tremendous amount of experience. But they're still pretty much using technology of the last 50 to 100 years. And that's the modern department. Right? If they're using helicopters and airplanes, well, they've been doing that for, more than 3/4 of a century. And the rest of the ground troops are still using medieval gardening tools. So it's really an industry, in my opinion, that's ripe for modernization and a fresh view on how to control fire. And my thought was, wind controls fire, so you have to control the wind. And that's the essence of our invention, is putting a jet engine on a big military truck, driving it up near the fire, and then blowing it back. And that will stop a fire from being able to advance to fresh fuels because the fire goes the direction that the wind goes. So you blow the flame tips, you use convection, you use water to increase humidity, and you blow all that energy back into the area that's already been burned and deny it the opportunity to advance to fresh fuels.
And that's not dangerous, right? If you're driving the vehicle, because it sounds like
anything around a wildfire is dangerous.
Okay.
But if you own the wind, then you probably have more control than any other asset. Plus, we're not fighting gravity the way helicopters and airplanes do. We are based on the ground, so there's no chance of us falling out of the sky. And virtually all ground vehicles now are capable of being remote operated. So companies like Forterra allow you to take any vehicle and convert it to either remote control or autonomous. So if you have this essentially large autonomous hurricane on wheels, you can send it up into places to manage fire in ways that you couldn't do with manned craft. So you're not allowed to put people in front of a fire front, right? We don't do that. But you can certainly put a big piece of equipment in there and let it blow fire back.
So you're 6 years into the journey now, is that right? Or almost 6 years in?
Something like that. So I'm 15 years into researching the technology and prototyping. I'm 2 years into being a funded venture capital backed business.
And so where are you up to right now? If I have a wildfire that I can see on the horizon, can I call you up and get your machines to just come and blow it away?
You can call me up and commiserate at this point. And I'm at exactly the same stage as every founder, not as far along as I'd like to be. However, we're quite close. We've funded the machine. It's being built. So our MVP will hit the ground at the end of February, and then we'll take it out to California and destinations beyond and demonstrate its capabilities. And off to the races from there.
Quick break. Imagine outsourcing without the headaches. With TaskBeast, you get your own chief outsourcing officer who finds top freelancers, manages them, and guarantees quality work, saving you time and stress. TaskBeast is outsourcing made seamless. Visit taskbeast.com to get started. Now, back to the show.
When I looked at some of the photos on the website, it almost just looked like you took a jet engine and like hooked up some water. But it sounds like it's a lot more complex than that.
I hope not.
Engineering behind it.
Yeah, the engineering is always complex, but the concepts are simple. And the concept is really as simple as strap a jet engine to a truck and put it in front of a fire and blow it back. So yes, you have to have hydraulic gimbals and pumps and various technologies along the way. And of course, the more things you want the machine to do autonomously, the more sensors you have to put on there and feedback cycles and eventually AI control. But the gist of it is pretty simple. So it'd be the same path as if, a surgeon has a scalpel, okay, but it's a sharp knife. Then you can put that on the end of a machine and you can turn it into, a robotic operating machine that you can operate from across the country. But the essence of it is still, a sharp blade doing the work. The essence of this is still a jet engine providing force so that you can create wind to reverse the direction of a fire.
Gotcha. And how big is the team? And is it mainly engineers at this point, or what does that look like?
Four full-time, and we're outsourcing the engineering based on our spec list. So we tell the engineers it needs to do this. You have to have 5,000 pounds of thrust. It has to have 2,000 gallons of water. The pump has to do 500 gallons per minute. So we're setting the speeds and feeds based on information that we have from our research in the field, as well as working with fire professionals and with wildfire experience.
So I'm curious, you say that your MVP will be ready in February, is that right?
Correct, yes.
But I saw there was a video
yes.
of you using a product on the news.
So that was our proof of concept.
Right.
And so the only difference in those is scale. The product that you saw, which has about a 150 foot or 48 meter throws a lot of water very quickly, but not that far. And that's about a 50. Are you kilometric or the other weird system?
I'm English, so we use both. It's really stupid, but
okay.
We literally use both.
So we're using about a 45 kilogram or 100-pound thrust jet engine on that proof of concept vehicle that you saw as a self-contained UTV. And what we decided for the MVP was just take everything that we had that was working and scale it up 50x. So 50 times more powerful jet engine, take it up to 5,000 pound thrust, large military vehicle, on the order of 30,000 pounds versus 1,500 pounds. So the whole thing just scales up to give you more power, because I'm sure you've seen plenty of video of wildfires, and they're absolutely massive forces of nature. Yeah, so are we.
And Steve, doesn't the water become a bottleneck very quickly, or how does?
Yeah, it does. So, but no more so. In fact, less so than it does with conventional firefighting means. So the logistics of getting water to a fire, are always a challenge. But that's a challenge that the infrastructure that's designed to fight wildfires is used to. What they're not used to is the fact that when you mist water and deliver it forcefully, you can put out 6 to 10 times more fire with the same gallon of water as if you were using it with a hose. So you get a lot more suppression per gallon than with conventional means.
Okay. And going back, I saw you started your career kind of in movie studios and things, doing special effects. Is that like you were creating this kind of stuff for movie sets and then this idea popped up, or how did that change?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Ken. I was a special effects coordinator doing mechanical effects for Hollywood movies. I worked for Tom Cruise and James Cameron and, did really hundreds of movies making mechanical effects. So that means you're making rain, you're making fire, wind, smoke, hail, mist, explosions, fires, the gamut of it. And while a firefighter gets to work with one piece of equipment all the time, in special effects, you're designing custom equipment for each application, for each environment, for each location. So you get a lot of experience designing equipment to meet particular needs of the climate that you're working in. If you're working in an area that's very dry, you might have to figure out, how do I create humidity over a 5-acre area using high pressure pumps and thousands of misting nozzles. And all of this technology from Hollywood applies beautifully to wildfire suppression.
It sounds like you went for the good cause. Like, I'm sure you could have, helped create a rainforest in some billionaire's backyard or something.
Sure. I probably have. But yeah, so the motto, internally for the company is to do well by doing good, and take the same skill set that could be used to provide 90 minutes of entertainment for somebody, and then use that to save homes, to save businesses, to save wildlife, and you can feel a little bit better about it.
And did you, in making a set, did you actually hook up a jet engine and do something like this, and that kind of
I've used
directly
jet
lead it
engines
in?
on sets before, yeah, various
Okay.
scales of them, from tiny little jet engines, all the way up through the type of engines that you'd see on a Learjet or a Gulfstream. And we use those for, you need to make the trees move because you're doing a giant storm scene. Jet engines just provide a lot more air movement and a lot of more thrust than you can get with a propeller-driven system. So we use them. And I worked as a volunteer firefighter and just couldn't believe the archaic quality of the tools that are still being used. And they really don't meet the challenge at all in terms of being able to contain or maneuver a fire to keep it from destroying an asset.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about your journey? I think you did Techstars, and how did the whole
Yeah,
kind of a move towards venture funding happen?
sure. It started with a napkin sketch and COVID. So I had this idea back in 2009. I was busy. I was working on movies, just didn't have a lot of time to develop it. When COVID hit, everything shut down. And therefore I was, forced to, or allowed to, have the time it took to really develop this patent out, to really think through the technology, to develop some schematics, drawings, engineering plans. And I essentially sent a napkin sketch to Tim Draper. It's probably the best known VC out there. And he said, this is a crazy idea to combat a crazy problem. Let's do it. He put in the first $500,000. That got us as far as a testable prototype, the one that you saw in the video. And then we went out and sought more funding after I got some training from Techstars, which was great. I did their Industries of the Future program. They paired us with engineers in Knoxville at the Oak Ridge National Lab. And they just, out of mere enthusiasm, threw in a lot of research and engineering assistance. And then that put us in a position where we could go get traditional VC funding. So Cottonwood Technology Fund and Muse Climate Capital were our lead investors there. They backed us. I know they hoped that we'd have worked faster, and so do I. But we finally have a design that we're quite happy with, and that I think is going to really meet the needs of the market in terms of being able to protect assets, to do evacuation route hardening, and to do direct combat of wildfire.
Gotcha. And your initial connection to Tim Draper was through a connection, or this was literally like a cold email or something?
Yeah, no, we knew one of his assistants who set us up a Zoom call, and
Yeah. Wow.
off it went from
That's
there.
that's a good story.
Yeah, it's worked out well. So right now we're conserving every dollar, putting it into that MVP and into the building of our sales funnel, reaching out to fire chiefs, incident commanders, section chiefs, really all of the people who would benefit from having a technology like this at their disposal, and then working with them to develop what that looks like as a service model. So there are really no fire departments that are set up to own, maintain, and operate jet engines, right? If I can't sell this machine, first of all, how do you know how to use it? How do you keep it up? That's not the problem that fire departments are trying to solve. They're trying to solve the problem of, how do we keep people in homes from burning up? And so we're packaging all of the resources that are necessary to provide that as a service business for that equipment.
And do you need to sell to the fire department, or like if I am a developer of a community of homes in California and I have some risk and I want to like maybe you can sell directly to them or the insurance company, like are there other
Absolutely.
options or
Yeah. So I don't know if you've looked at the economics of wildfire at all, but essentially the longer the fire goes, the more money everyone makes, right? And I'm not saying that this motivates anybody to do well or to do poorly in their suppression activities, but the longer the fire goes, the more money the firefighters make, the more overtime they make, the more retardant gets sold, the more aerial drops get sold, the more bulldozer line gets put in, the more lunches, hotel rooms, etc. So the economics are kind of contrary to the goal. What I'm hoping we'll see more in the future is a privatization where the profit is tied to rapid suppression. So the faster I can put your fire out, the more money I make, essentially, rather than the longer it takes me to fight your fire, the more money I make. Because that model, unfortunately, works for everyone except the insurance companies. They're the ones who are really taking the brunt of this, because when the fire consumes a lot of assets, they're on the hook to pay for those. And of course, that's killing the real estate market in California because insurance companies are just pulling out of the market. So if you can't get your property insured, you can't get a mortgage. You can't get a mortgage, you can't buy your house. There's massive economic ripple from this. So as a developer, Ken, I don't know if you're planning to become a California real estate developer, but you could certainly hire Team Wildfire to go lay in a 600-foot band of retardant around your development and to keep that retardant active, but with regular replenishment. So long-term retardants work until they're washed away. So depending on whether it takes 3, 4, 5 inches of rain, once that's happened, you'd have to reapply the retardants. But as long as those retardants are bound to the vegetation, you have very effective way of slowing down wildfires from consuming your development.
Okay. But it sounds like your go-to-market is kind of a B2B sales process of finding the right person and the right organization.
It's a B2G sale primarily because we'd be selling to incident commanders, fire departments, FEMA, CAL FIRE, the section chiefs who are in charge. So and of course, it's a show me business. Nobody's going to buy anything they haven't seen work on their own land with their own eyes. So an essential part of the go-to-market is the road show. We bring up the machine, you light your land on fire, I blow it out. If you want to do an A/B testing, you light 2 pieces of land on fire next to each other. You let us attack one with the jet engine. You loose your troops with their fire hoses on the other one. We see who puts it out faster with less resources. And given that blowing a 5,000-pound thrust hurricane is a pretty darn effective way to disrupt a fire, it's also a workforce multiplier, because that one tool can do the work, of dozens of firefighters hauling around axes and hose and pitchforks and whatnot. So we're primarily B2G, but absolutely B2B is a viable market as well. Military assets need to be protected. During the recent fire in the Panhandle in Texas, they had to shut down the nuclear missile processing facility there. So to the degree that wildfires now represent a threat to military readiness, I would expect to see the military providing more funding and more resources to companies that can give them the capability to push back wildfires.
This kind of the competition of kind of the old school way versus your on the same fire. That sounds like a good game show or something. You gotta hit Mr. Beast up with that.
Yeah, so I don't really see it as a competing because what they have now doesn't work and they don't have enough of it. They don't have enough firefighters. They don't have enough apparatus. What they do need to have their capabilities supplemented. And I don't think any single technology going into the wildfire market can claim to be the solution, but certainly one more arrow in the quiver, or one more tool in the arsenal. But I do hope and expect that this will be the biggest, strongest tool, and that it'll be used in a wide variety of ways.
The last question is, given your B2G, like, does the recent change in presidential administration change anything in your business or not really?
I have a feeling that regardless of who sits in the White House, people are going to want to put their property out when it's on fire. If the new regime stands for anything, it seems to be states' rights. States are the ones who primarily are funding putting out their own fires. When a fire reaches a certain scale, then it becomes a FEMA matter. But I don't think that backing the efforts of firefighters is really a political issue. I think everybody backs firefighters. Everyone wants them to do the best job they can, and everyone wants to see destructive wildfires put down as quickly as possible.
Now, I know it's still relatively early because it's so capital intensive to develop this sort of thing.
Yes.
But are you just focusing on the US for now, or are you looking at other countries that might be interested in this kind of technology?
Yeah, we're focused on whoever's going to write a check first. Now, obviously, for logistical reasons, it's easier for us to work. Colorado, Texas, Florida, and California as our big wildfire markets in the States. But if Greece or Germany or Portugal or Australia said, we need that equipment down here and we'll pay you more to bring it down here than they'll pay you up there, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't really matter where we start, right? The physics of fire are the same. Every fire runs off fuel, oxygen, heat, and a chemical reaction. That's the same north and south of the equator, although the swirling smoke goes in a different direction. But really what we're looking to do is to show firefighters in any country the effectiveness of this technology and the expertise with which we deliver it. I would expect that it would go viral very quickly, no matter who is the first use case, as long as the use is successful.
And one other quick question I had in my mind, like,
Sure, Ken.
in fighting overseas wars, America's used a lot of these contract soldiers. Like, is there a day where you don't have to equip the firemen, but you're just your own like independent firefighting team?
Ken, you're reading my mind. I don't know if I put the tea leaves out there or not, but there is no way that every country that struggles with wildfire is going to be capable of managing those wildfires. When 54 fires erupt in the outskirts of Athens, and they have to tell people, leave the grape presses and the olive presses and the pizzerias behind, drop your tools, grab a hoe and run out to the fire. Well, what you see is at the end of that week, a dozen dead people. They just don't have the expertise, the equipment, the capacity to manage those fires. And the cost of every country developing those capabilities would be astronomical, which is not to say that every country doesn't have that need, but it's far more efficient to look at the model that you described, where Team Wildfire essentially becomes the international SEAL Team 6 of wildfire. You got a fire, you pick up the phone, we show up, we figure out, how to source the retardants, the water, the guys, the machinery, the satellite imagery, the forecast data, all the things that you need to have to put out a wildfire under one roof, all accessible with one phone call. So that is the goal, Ken, is to privatize that in an incredibly efficient, powerful mechanism that you'd be silly to try to do it yourself. It would take you a long time and it would cost you lives, and you could hire experts to come do it. And this is why when they want to put out the oil wells, they hired Red Adair and his company Boots and Coots, and didn't matter which country you were in, he came, he put out your oil well fires and got his check and went home. And that's, I think, the best way to do it.
And it would sound like the insurance companies are the ones that have the most to lose, and they
Yes.
seem like the ones to logically sell this service to. What exactly prevents that from happening today?
The same thing that prevents most change from happening, and that's simply tradition. It's just industries are slow to change. Can you imagine an industry staffed with actuaries? That's not really the personality type for, rapid evolution and innovation. But that is where we're going to have to go. Insurance companies, being the ones who have the most to lose, will have to get in front of this. If I were an insurance company, I would have my own fire department, and I would make sure that my assets were protected. And we have to just spread that across the industry. And that model that I described, by the way, exists. Chubb has a company called Wildfire Defense Systems. AIG has their own equivalent of that. So but their purpose is just to protect the assets of that company. But we need to expand that to the neighborhood, so that a consortium of insurance companies sponsor a fire department that makes sure that there are minimized losses in an entire community. That cost is spread. But that is where I think we'll see it. The people who have the most to lose should have the most control over how the risk is managed.
I have a couple of not totally related questions, but I've just got to ask more about the jet engines.
Go ahead.
Because who doesn't want to know about the jet engine?
Right.
For your MVP, are you having to build a custom jet engine for this, or are you buying like a second-hand one off eBay? How does that work?
Yeah. Jet engines are controlled in the U.S. by the FAA. The FAA says, how often you're allowed to run it, and how often it has to be rebuilt, and how it has to be maintained, etc. Because you're flying. Well, when you're not flying, the FAA has no authority over what you do with that engine. So when an engine times out, when it hits its 30,000 hour mark, you have to rebuild it if you want to fly it. It's very expensive. At that point, you may as well buy a new engine. So we're buying timed out engines, which are available essentially, at scrap value, but they're perfectly effective for blowing at fires. We're also partnering with a company in Germany called Daikosi. Daikosi is doing a very similar technology, but for fixed station apparatus. So we're essentially taking the same technology that they're using, and we're putting it on a mobile platform so you can put it in front of a fire wherever the fire is. And the truck, off-the-shelf military truck, surplus. So if you wanted to think in terms of, this is a green business, despite the fact that we consume a lot of diesel. We are upcycling these parts that otherwise, would just sit in junkyards. So we're recycling the engine and all of the metal assets in there, and we're providing new life for these surplus military vehicles.
So it's actually quite an efficient process by the sound of it, really. Kind of using scrap
It really
materials.
is, right. So the Learjet company went out of business. In the course of their day, they made 30,000 of these TFE 731 engines. The ownership of that particular engine has traded hands many times. Now Honeywell owns the technology, but it's an outdated engine in terms of its efficiency for flight, but a very, very reliable platform to use as a big wind machine for pushing back a fire.
Sounds a bit like in Bangkok, there's these boats where they're often using the old car engines.
Yes.
Sounds a bit similar.
Longboats, yeah.
Yes, that's right. Right. So what happens if the engine dies? You pull it out and you stick a new one in. Right. The boat's not going to sink. Nothing's going to happen to our technology if the engine stops working. We pull over, our repair truck meets it there, fix the engine or swap it out, put it back in the fight. So it's under a day to completely overhaul the technology, put new stuff in, and get back to work.
And there was just one other thing, and I said it was not really tied to the jet engines at all. That was kind of a little diversion. And if you've got a couple of minutes, I just wanted to ask about how you met your co-founder, because that's often a difficult thing for many startup founders. How did that pan out?
We've been through a few co-founders already. And the person who was raising money originally told me, the team you finish with isn't the team you start with. And very often, in the beginning of your venture, you don't really know what the skill sets that you're going to need are. You have a vague idea, or you're friends with people or something. But as the business matures, you learn more about what your needs are in your co-founders, in your personnel, in your staff, and then you upgrade or swap out accordingly. So that's where we are on it. Yeah, right.
Trial and error. Same as everybody else. Yeah.
Right.
And you never know how long it's going to take until you happen to meet that person who you.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It turns out we needed more fire expertise. We needed more business acumen. So we hired for that, or made founders of people who had those skills. And as we get into 2025, I'm sure we'll find there's new skill sets that we hadn't anticipated, and we'll have to bring those people in and provide them some equity, or however we compensate them. But it's a rapidly changing environment, and you have to change out the players as needed. So
and how are you making those connections?
That's tough, right? Because of course you form personal relationships and attachments and friendships with people, but as somebody told me, we're not in show friendship, we're in show business. Well, at least that was appropriate when I was in the effects business. But the same thing here, right, is, the needs of the customer come first, and whatever service delivery team is best for doing that. I said this needs of the customer come first, but of course, the needs of the investors come just as high, right? They put money into this, and they deserve a good return. As I know, your show is very popular with startup folks, and there's a rule of thumb that if you can't give your investors a 34x return on their investment, they may put the money somewhere else. So it's not like you're just bootstrapping this, and if you make 10% on your money, you're good. If they put $1 million in, they need to see $34 million out because of the failure rate and because of the competitive uses of that money that they could have placed elsewhere. We very much believe that wildfire suppression is a business that would be handsomely rewarded, that it's desperately needed, and that it's relatively inflexible in terms of the demand. If you've got a fire, you've got to put it out. And people don't really ask, well, okay, so you could put out this fire, but what's it going to cost? Right? They just say, please put out the fire. Send us a bill. So, the price for putting out a wildfire is, quote unquote, whatever it takes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting project, this, and I can't wait to follow it and find out more. I can't wait to see the full size MVP. I mean, that's such a major part of this as well. It's not difficult to get attention, I guess.
Right. No,
you've got such a massive thing to demo.
That's right. It's a great news story. There's a lot of visuals. Everybody likes something to do with fire, noise, jets. So getting publicity for this isn't the challenge. It's developing what the service model looks like, and then figuring out what's the best way to use this technology. So traditionally, when a new technology comes along, they try to use it the way they used the old technology. Right? When television came out, they did radio shows, but now you could watch them. And it took a while before they developed something that was an actual TV show. And the same with this. So I would imagine that initially incident commanders are going to want to use this just like a bigger hose, or a more powerful turret on a truck. But there may be completely new ways that this technology affords us to put out wildfires that haven't yet been anticipated and that will develop while we're using it.
I really think you should try to reach out to Mr. Beast. I could so see a Mr. Beast show with your technology, like doing something cool.
100%. And
then it's in front of 300 million people.
Yeah, that's right. No, that would be great. And really, we'll have customers that can pay for this themselves, and we'll have customers that need this that can't pay for it. So there's certainly an opportunity for philanthropy in here. I would imagine that if a fire breaks out in California, they have the money. That same fire breaks out in Honduras, they would be powerless to do anything about it because they couldn't fund this. So I would expect that both Team Wildfire, ourselves, and other philanthropists would want to donate our services so that communities can be protected.
Well, look, I think we're going to have to wrap it up for today, which is a shame. We always just sort of start to get into the interesting bits, and because we're trying to keep it quite short.
Well, Ken, Keiran, I'm not going anywhere. If you get down the road and, there's a few burning questions, no pun intended, that you didn't get a chance to ask, I'm always here in the shop, in the studio.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Well, look, do you have any final message or anything you would like to say to our audience?
Keep at it.
Keep at it.
Keep at it, yeah. Keep at it and just continue to pursue your dream of what you believe the future can look like. The world isn't changed by naysayers. It's changed by people who have a vision and a dream and the ability to pursue it no matter what. So some people will be out there pursuing really bad ideas that will go nowhere, but that's the cost that we all bear if we want to have new ideas, new technologies, and a brighter future.
Absolute pleasure. So fascinating to learn about this.
Thank you so much, Keiran. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Steve.